Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, I'm Anna. I'm a psychologist in training, a doctoral intern in clinical psychology, and so today we're going to be talking about the 2 ingredients of abuse. If we're really minimizing it to 2 ingredients, obviously abuse is something that is extremely complex, and so I don't want to seem like this completely encompasses everything that goes on with abuse, but I do think it's typically what psychologists and abuse experts refer to when they talk about what exactly abuse is. I will put some resources for your support down in the description box if this is a topic that's heavy for you or you do need someone to reach out to because you're personally in a situation that is pertinent to this. I really hope that you are able to get the support that you need. If that's the case, you deserve the support that you need. And without further ado, let's just get into it. The 2 ingredients of abuse are power and control. Starting with power. When we talk about power, we're not really talking about the internal sense of power, like feeling empowered, girl boss type of thing. Like, you would never be in a situation where it's like she feels so empowered and so she's able to abuse me. That's not how it works. We're talking about tangible power, financial, social, identity related, like age, gender, race, sexual orientation. Someone who has a very concrete, tangible level of power over another person. So for example, something like an employer has more power over an employee. A 50-year-old, very rich, very famous, straight man who is beloved by millions and has connections with a lot of other really powerful people holds a great deal more power than, say, a 23-year-old bisexual woman who has less money and is less famous, less beloved, fewer resources, less of a fan base, less physical strength, less gender privilege. Now, can a woman in this situation behave abusively? Yes, of course. Anyone of any gender, of any identity, can behave abusively, and that should absolutely be condemned. Power is really important because it sort of determines how effective that abuse is able to be. So it's unlikely to have the same effect on that far more powerful person than it would on the less powerful person. So even if 2 people are in a situation where they're both behaving abusively, although mutual abuse is a myth, that's not something that happens. There's always a power imbalance, always a person who is the instigator. Even if that were the case, that 2 people were equally abusive to each other, the person with the least amount of power would still get the brunt of it. Without power, the underprivileged person is kind of just like an annoying gnat to the very powerful person. They can still cause them distress, and again, that should be condemned, but they're unlikely to be able to exert control over their life and isolate them and use tools of oppression against them because those things by definition require power. Think about it this way. Does an employee have the power to abuse their boss? The employee can certainly speak really disrespectfully to their boss, turn other people against them, be just generally abusive or unfair, and their boss can absolutely be hurt by that and distressed and have to work that out and can even experience a trauma reaction to that depending on, the circumstances. But that's not a very likely scenario. It's far more likely for the boss who has power over this person's livelihood, social connections, occupational connections, ability to put food on the table, day-to-day schedule. The employer has a lot more power over the employee. So the employee acting up is unlikely to turn into an abusive dynamic because the employer has power that they can use to say, don't speak to me that way, I'm going to fire you, or I'm going to not write you a letter of recommendation for your next job. Let me give you another example. Does a child have the power to abuse their parent? Now, I think some of you may have maybe come across children who are very disrespectful, very rude to their parents. I personally have seen this myself on 1 or 2 occasions. Can this cause the parent distress? Can it cause serious turbulences in their relationship? Absolutely. But that parent holds power over the child. They can ground them, they can take away their resources, they can isolate them. And it's far more likely to see a parent abuse a child than the other way around because of that power imbalance. The larger the power imbalance, the more potential for abuse there is from the person with the power. That is why parents hold so much power over their children and have the ability to permanently traumatize them due to that power imbalance. That is why a very powerful corporation has the ability to wreak havoc on the life of a, let's say, lower level, entry level employee who's being taken advantage of. That is why a fully formed adult can traumatize someone who's much younger, who hasn't yet developed their prefrontal cortex, by being in a relationship with them. Now, I want to be clear that obviously a power imbalance doesn't necessarily mean that there will be an abuse of that power. If that were the case, we wouldn't be able to have relationships with anyone that has even a slightly different level of power than us. It's about taking advantage of that power, abusing that power, and therefore abusing the person with the less amount of power. So then the second major component of abuse is control. And this is when one party tries to decide what the other does with their life to a restrictive degree that impedes their right to self-determination, their freedom as a human being, and so forth. And there's a difference between normative control and coercive control. A parent is allowed to exercise a reasonable amount of control over their child. Like, no, you cannot have a lollipop before dinner because I just spent 2 hours cooking and I know how you react to this. That is very different from a parent saying you can never have a lollipop. A partner can say, I don't feel comfortable with you going over to this guy's place because he's inappropriate with you, or there's a history there, or whatever. That's very different from your partner saying, I don't want you talking to any other men, you can't have any male friends, you can't wear that because other guys might want to talk to you. A corporation can tell you, you need to work these hours and this is the pay that we are going to give you. But if they're saying, you have to dress in this way every day, you have to wear high heels, you have to put on makeup, you have to dress in this revealing clothing, hello Hooters. We can decide what you say, we can decide what you do in your free time, we decide if you even have the right to free time. That's obviously a very different situation. Control is not inherently abusive, just like power imbalances are not inherently abusive. And some people do struggle with being controlling. Some people have OCD, OCPD, eating disorders, other types of issues that cause them to be a little bit more anxious and controlling towards the people in their life. But in most cases, it's because they genuinely want what's best for the other person. Now, that can still veer into a territory where it's so restrictive that it's abusive, even if your intentions are pure. But I would say in most cases, when it becomes abusive is when it's excessive and it's paired with a power imbalance, where it's not about wanting what's best for the other person, it's about wanting them to do what best serves you. And if it is excessive control and it's paired with a power imbalance, it can have a traumatizing and abusive effect on the person they intend to protect, or the person that they're just trying to do what's best for them by deciding to control their life. You know, like a parent who is overprotective of their child and isolates them completely from any sort of social life, that's still abusive, even if your intentions are pure. So you put together power and control and you get someone with power and authority over you is telling you exactly how to live your life, is very coercive, and is very difficult to disentangle yourself from. If someone's just controlling, like let's say you have a friend that holds equal power to you and just is always telling you what to do, it's frustrating, it can feel unfair. It's not necessarily abuse. If someone's just more powerful than you, again, not necessarily abusive. If we outlawed every single relationship where there's a power differential, people would have a very limited supply of relationships to choose from. But if someone is more powerful than you and they use that power to control you, then what you probably have is an abusive relationship. So I hope that clarifies to you kind of a quick and dirty way to think about the 2 ingredients of abuse. Again, resources in the description box if you need to use those. I really hope that you don't, but it's good to have if you do. If you enjoy this type of content, I invite you to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.